Stark Raving Dad is one of my go-to episodes to explain how the Simpsons' golden years were so unique, so offbeat and interesting in its execution. It also stars an alleged pedophile, and now it has been pulled from circulation. So this review is probably going to be a total train wreck. This is a YouTuber covering something controversial, a train wreck tends to follow. But let's at least try to organize how we're going to tackle this thing. I'm going to do the typical reviewy kind of stuff up front, like I usually do. Then at this timestamp, I'm going to transition to talk about the Michael Jackson controversy and the Simpsons decision. And then we'll forget all our troubles with a big bowl of strawberry ice cream. Okay, so as a Simpsons episode, Stark Raving Dad is interesting in how it sort of smashes two very specific kinds of stories right into each other. You have the Bart and Lisa brother-sister stuff, a very traditional sort of forgiveness story. Then you have Homer at a mental institution, the kind of topical romp the show excels at. Very character-driven story, very plot-driven story. It balances really well. I love how this thing is plotted, how carefully they shift the focus between the different characters. The episode knows it's fundamentally going to hinge on the Bart and Lisa relationship, so they open with this dynamic. They lay the foundation up front, keep inserting little check-ins on them. Now let's be real here. This Bart and Lisa conflict is one of the most basic stories you could ever tell. Bart makes a promise, doesn't keep it, makes it up to her in the end. Dunzo. Not a lot of story beats here, you know? I think the writers were smart in how they knew how much time and attention Homer's storyline and its giant guest star was going to soak up. We don't have time for two intricately plotted stories. Let's instead shake up the conventional one with the quirky and offbeat. Bart and Lisa's storyline is the bread in this story sandwich. Even when going all over the place, they still include stuff like Bart's lucky red hat at the conclusion, basically bookending the action. There's nice symmetry to the plot. The Bart and Lisa stuff is cute and all, but it's obviously not the draw of the episode. As an emotional core, it's pretty okay. If you want a complete, nuanced look at these two, go back to Bart vs. Thanksgiving. The overarching themes about nonconformity and the perception of insanity are really what makes Stark Raving Dad compelling. The selection of a pink shirt being the trigger that starts the whole thing is absolutely brilliant. God, this pink shirt is so good. That shot of him on the security camera, Mr. Burns' reaction to it, priceless. Sometimes other examples of satire can fall a little flat for me because the characters react so over the top that they feel more like aliens than humans. The satire has to at least have one foot in realistic logic. But knowing Mr. Burns already, his control freak tendencies, and his view of employees as mindless drones, I totally buy this. Pink is the perfect color for these purposes, preying upon the whole real men don't wear pink shtick. He'd have to be crazy to want to be seen in a pink shirt. I hear there are men out there who still refuse to wear pink, but that's just a rumor. What's funny is I feel like Homer kinda rocks this pink shirt. It works for him. Maybe it's because of his pink car, or it balances out his temperament. It's just a good color for him. They do have a good sense for when to pump the brakes on the social satire. Like Homer doesn't get committed just because of the pink shirt. They were smart to put in this intermediate step of failing the psych exam. I think this is pretty important. You could argue that maybe the satire loses something by not letting the dumb social transgression ruin Homer's life. But as is, I think it walks a nice line of making that point and still living in the logic of our world. I'm a bit on the fence about Bart's characterization as a whole. There's a strange coldness to his personality that we don't often get, where he'll be surprised that he's relieved Homer's not dead, he'll barely seem to care Homer's committed, he'll tell Lisa to trust her instinct and not ask. Obviously they need to write him slightly more aggressively than usual, since the story depends on his character arc. Just surprised that they went with this colder, more cynical portrayal, rather than just a childish and irresponsible one. To his credit, he does not deliberately sabotage Homer's test. They make it clear the majority of the blame goes to his father's laziness. I do wonder if this was a rewrite, though. At the mental institution, they push the concept of Bart tormenting Homer, that is the cause of all of his troubles. But Act 1 comes off more as a series of unhappy accidents. While Bart is written somewhat coldly in this episode in general, I suppose they could have made it much more extreme. The mental institution jokes work as a whole. They do a nice job directing most of the humor at the institution, as well as Homer himself. It very easily could have come off as LOL, look at the mentally ill. But, you know, they'll do their movie parodies, they'll introduce the chief, and the joke will be less about the chief being weird, more about the staff not really helping him. The joke is less about this guy's problems, more about Homer's obliviousness and general callousness. As a result, the whole thing comes off as mostly light and easygoing. This does create a bit of a tonal problem when they cut to Homer being scared at night. He's obviously in a foreign place away from his family, so you can understand why he's feeling frightened. The shift just isn't conveyed very well, since all the other scenes are so non-threatening. I get why they went for this shift, since that song is so darn great, it just feels a bit out of place. Alright, we've danced around this enough. We'll talk about Michael Jackson's role in this thing. I had cited this episode in my Lisa Goes Gaga review about how to do a larger-than-life celebrity guest correctly. The idea of balancing the we're going to do a big celebrity stunt with the let's not make this a vanity project. They knew that just having Michael Jackson show up was going to overpower the story. You can't just write Bart vs. Thanksgiving and have Bart randomly meet Michael for like a minute. Imagine a version of that episode where Michael plays one of the homeless guys. Pretty random and abrupt. I think the solution of having Michael Jackson play himself, but not play himself, is pretty slick. It's no fun having him run around showing off how cool he is, in front of giant crowds who love and adore him, even though you could argue a giant portion of it is exactly that. Communicating it all through this big balding dude, having him do dance moves and the singing, is so much more interesting. It fits in well with Homer's pink shirt. This giant man who defies society by just talking like and pretending to be Michael Jackson. I really enjoy the conversational back and forths they give him. How Homer has no idea who he is, how he has to convince Bart. Especially with the phone conversation, there's a rawness to the dialogue that's appealing. Sounds like a real conversation to me. They do give him some random show business one-liners, but the majority of his lines sound pretty natural. Well, except for maybe this moment. I've always loved how weird this joke is, by the way, how Lisa turns to the camera and calls them out like that. Such an odd joke. The kind of punchline only Lisa can deliver. They don't really have a ton of time for him to mingle with the Simpson family. We've talked about how little there is to the Bart and Lisa conflict, and currently, Homer is a bit busy with other stuff. It's just like a couple songwriting moments, and then boom, Lisa, it's your birthday. An absolutely heartwarming and likable earworm of a song. The credits version is actually even better, with that awesome Lisa sax solo on it. The plot is not exactly Shakespeare in the end, but it implements its guest stars so well and leads to fundamentally a feel-good moment. Overall, it's never really been one of my favorite episodes of Season 3, which is why I'm reviewing it separately now. It falls in that weird valley for me where it isn't quite as funny as the Laugh Riot episodes, and it doesn't give me the feels like the other ones. It's more of an episode I admire on a conceptual level, that they took a challenging situation and actually put together a solid episode. I can think of dozens of alternate timelines where this is the huge jump the shark moment for the show. The fact that it isn't is really remarkable. Now, as most people have heard, Stark Raving Dad has come up semi-recently in the news. It has been pulled from circulation by its rights holders as a result of the Leading Neverland documentary and the allegations against Michael Jackson. It does not appear on Simpsons World, it is not being broadcast in syndication anymore. It is not being put on the production of new Season 3 Blu-rays and DVDs. Current showrunner of The Simpsons, Al Jean, came up with the episode with his writing partner Mike Reiss. Al Jean, along with Matt Groening and James L. Brooks, came out and stated that they feel Michael Jackson used The Simpsons at the time, used their child-friendly appeal to groom minors, enhancing his child-friendly image. Michael Jackson specifically approached them because he was a big fan of Bart and wanted to do the show and give him a #1 record. As a result, production is uncomfortable distributing this episode anymore. So the question is, the big elephant in the room here is whether they were right to put a self-imposed ban on Stark Raving Dad. Here's where I personally landed on it. I watched Leaving Neverland. I didn't want to watch it. I found the whole thing extremely hard to sit through, but I did it. I think Michael Jackson did the things described in the documentary. I will preface that statement with, I think, because I obviously cannot know for sure. For me personally, there's just way too much smoke around it, way too many boundaries that were certainly crossed, way too many instances described by employees, family members, and other accusers. Too many locked doors and sleepovers. Once again, though, I must reiterate that I could be wrong in this belief. This is just where I landed on after looking at the information available to me. There is just so much money at stake that the amount of discrediting being thrown around is legitimately difficult to navigate. I don't, however, think this immediately makes Michael Jackson's work bad or anything, and that Stark Raving Dad is suddenly this horrible Simpsons episode. That's ridiculous. I still think he put in a good performance here, and the show implemented him well. The writing and animation is legitimately good. These two mindsets aren't mutually exclusive. You can say intellectually he did a good job, but still be bummed out about his actions outside the show. I admit, it is a lot weirder watching the end of Stark Raving Dad after seeing the documentary, how he stays up and writes that song with Bart. In the commentary for that episode, recorded years ago, Al Jean mentions one of Jackson's notes was that he wanted a scene where they stay up writing a song together. Now, does this prove any bad intentions? Obviously not. It's just now I don't watch the scene the same way anymore. I think about the allegations and the patterns described. Regarding the ban on Stark Raving Dad, well, I hate to say it, this is the answer that no one on YouTube wants, but I honestly don't know what the right answer is here. Because I'm trying to put myself in the Simpsons' shoes. Like if I did a crossover video with another YouTuber where I promote him and say what an awesome and friendly guy he is, and then it comes out later that he might have molested some children, kids who might have been influenced or impressed by my crossover video, well, I think I'd feel pretty gross afterwards, even if the actual content of the video is fine. I would be uncomfortable with my unwitting role in what happened. It wouldn't be my fault. Maybe I don't even feel 100% confident I know what happened. But I could see a scenario where I wouldn't want to keep making ad revenue off that video anymore, or keep promoting that guy. It's ultimately the content creator's decision what they want to distribute. Now in my example, I could theoretically demonetize as a half step. The Simpsons are stuck in a world where they get paid per airing and syndication. Maybe they could donate all the proceeds to a charity for abuse victims. I don't know. The other thing is, Michael Jackson is dead. Everything we're describing happened in the past. He can't theoretically use the episode to groom children. As a what do we do about this now, their explanation isn't completely satisfying. It becomes more of an argument on what do we do with your past, whether it's better to say, hey, we don't want to celebrate this in society going forward, or hey, this is a historical snapshot of his influence at the time. It's not exactly like those old Looney Tunes sets that the Warner Brothers had put out, the ones with the specific warning about the racial and ethnic prejudices in the old cartoons. Stark Raving Dad doesn't really have any explicitly problematic elements in its text that it has to acknowledge. It's more existential in nature. It's just its guest star and the possible intent behind him starring in it. One idea I had initially was maybe to put that warning in front, like the Warner Brothers did. But what do you really do? Flash a legal disclaimer that says, Michael Jackson may or may not have used this episode to groom children for sexual abuse? And then cut to the opening credits? You heard the beginning of this video. Opening with the expression, alleged pedophile, makes everything immediately weird afterwards. But maybe that's the point. Should we hide the weirdness of the episode's existence, or is it okay to view it in a vacuum? Like I said, I honestly don't know what the solution is. I totally get why The Simpsons feel betrayed by this episode's existence. It makes sense why you wouldn't want to bandy around Michael Jackson's image, out of respect for the victims. I would feel pretty similarly to the producers, to be honest. But to some degree, I think there is great value in having cautionary tales around, saying, this is something that happened, we were being used, this was the atmosphere Michael Jackson built up around himself. Stark Raving Dad is basically an exhibit in the pop culture phenomenon. I think no matter which side of the Michael Jackson debate you land on, whether you believe all the victims or you think they're all lying, I think the important thing is to prevent the possibility of this kind of situation in the future. to recognize the power dynamics of these parasocial relationships between celebrities and fans, the specific boundaries that have to exist between adults and children. Especially now with the internet, where the barriers are so much lower, so much easier for people to exploit. Who knows how long Stark Raving Dad will be a banned episode? This might be temporary, there might be a day where management changes their mind. Who knows? But honestly, if you really, really want to see Stark Raving Dad in the meantime, it's out there. You can't put an episode in the wild for close to 30 years and expect it to disappear from the face of the planet. The internet does not work that way. And the original Season 3 DVDs on eBay aren't going to be expensive forever. In fact, as of this video's recording, you can get one for under 20 bucks. Yeah, it's annoying to do all that, but hey, at least you get all the amazing Season 3 DVD commentaries as a consolation prize. This whole discussion has, in general, made me sadder and sadder the more I talk about it, so I think I will close out the video right here. And I think I will have that big bowl of strawberry ice cream right now. Except chocolate, and like 3 times as much. Sorry for the heavy nature of this video. Let me know where you landed on this controversial topic. I guess Stark Raving Dad continues being a fascinating and notable moment in Simpsons history. As always, thanks for watching.